events with our customers. So I would look to see more of these types of events. So if there's anything specific that you would like to see as far as training or outreach, please feel free to let us know. We'll be happy to follow up on that. And we were looking forward to seeing everybody in person this morning. Obviously, due to COVID, that's a little bit difficult. So we'll hope to do that in the future. And with respect to COVID, you know, we do understand that it is making everyone's life more difficult. So if there are items that you're facing in your business that are COVID related, or even if they're not COVID related, obviously, if there's anything that we can do to assist you all, please feel free to reach out to us anytime. You can get in touch with your pretreatment contact, either Chris or Cody, as well as Mike, David, or myself at any time. If there's anything that we may be able to help you with, we are certainly willing to see what the city can do to assist you all. And again, just welcome. If anybody has any comments or questions for me at this point, I'm happy to address those. I'm actually on vacation today, so in a few minutes I'm going to exit the Zoom, but I did want to just take a minute to say hello to everyone. Thanks.
Thanks, Stephanie. Speaking of questions, when we start the presentation, we're going to mute everybody. And if you do have questions, there is a chat function on the bottom of your Zoom or top of your Zoom that you can write questions in, and we can either try to answer them during the presentation, or we can actually answer them at the end. So whatever. So if you want to, you know, type something in there, we can wait to the end to answer that. So thanks for that. Thanks, Stephanie. And remember, Stephanie signs all of your discharge permits. So she's very involved with the pretreatment program. And to make this workshop a little bit more exciting, we actually have two great prizes, thanks, Stephanie, from Two Rivers Utilities that will be given out kind of during the meeting today. This is just to prove that we don't only give out enforcement actions, you know, we do give some good stuff out sometimes too. So I'm going to switch it over to our presentation here. And I want to kind of first give you an overview of the topics that we're going to discuss today, that, you know, give an understanding of why and how to do an application. So first, we're going to kind of start out with definitions, and we'll go to some of the events that has led to these requirements, purpose of a pretreatment program, how we evaluate the need for a permit, how to prepare for the permit application, how to complete the permit application, including what common errors to avoid, permit fee information, and some relevant dates of importance. So now I'll hand it over to Chris to give you the good information. All right, here we go, Chris.
All right, thank you, Mike. So I'm going to define a few words that are commonly used in pretreatment. Many of you have already heard some of these, so I'll just try to briefly touch on all of them. The first definition is control authority, and this refers to the POTW organization, which in this case is the City of Gastonia, Two Rivers Utilities. So next we have EPA, and this stands for the Environmental Protection Agency. The EPA was founded in 1970. So our third definition deals with interference, and sometimes pretreatment will have concerns about a specific chemical or waste stream that may cause interference, and interference refers to the inhibition or disruption of the wastewater collection system, treatment processes, operations, or its sludge use and disposal. Much like your SIU permits that you all operate under, our Long Creek Wastewater plant has an NPDES permit, and it regulates what can be discharged directly to the receiving streams of North Carolina. So we discharge directly to the South Fork River. So next we have ordinance, and in this case, ordinance refers to the code of ordinances for the city of Gastonia. Next we have pass-through. So when pretreatment uses the phrase pass-through, we're referring to a discharge that exits or passes through the POTW into the surface waters, which causes a violation of an MTDS permit. Another commonly used word is pollutant of concern, or POC, and it's a chemical that the control authority identifies as possibly posing a risk to the wastewater treatment plant or its receiving streams or biosolids. Next we have POTW, and it stands for the Publicly Owned Treatment Works, and includes not only the wastewater treatment plant, but at the collection system as well. So now we have processed wastewater, and that refers to any wastewater that comes into contact with a raw material or product of any kind. We also have Slug and Spill Control Plan, or SSCP, and this plan should describe measures that an industry takes to prevent accidental discharges or slugs, and actions to take if one should occur. And lastly, we have Significant Industrial User, or SIU, and criteria for who is an SIU will be explained in the next upcoming slides. So now we're looking at a river that is on fire. This is actually one of the photos of the infamous Cuyahoga River fire, and it actually happened on multiple occasions and was caused by a continuous stream of pollution like oils and volatile organics that were discharged into the river by manufacturing companies. So finally, there was a fire in 1961 that was the last straw, which led to the EPA's creation of the Clean Water Act of 1972. And the Clean Water Act, its aim is to regulate the discharge of pollutants into the surface waters of the United States. Here we have a photo of the 1981 Louisville sewer explosion. This event caused the destruction of 13 miles of sewer lines and streets, and was ultimately due to the illegal discharge of hexane, hexane being a highly combustible gas. So this would be an excellent or prime example of interference. So I've touched on this a little bit already, but what is the overall purpose of a pretreatment program? As said earlier, the Clean Water Act started programs to protect the environment. The purpose of this program is to protect the entire POTW by reducing pollutants from entering the POTW that could cause interference and pass-through. The city is required to operate and maintain an approved pretreatment program. Two Rivers Utilities pretreatment program is approved by the state pretreatment program, also known as DEQ, or the Department of Environmental Quality. So again, all SIUs must have a discharge permit, and we determine this by, there's a few criteria to determine this. So the first criteria to be identified as an SIU is to be considered a categorical industrial user, or CIU, that has the potential to discharge processed wastewater. So any industry who has a manufacturing process that's listed under 40 CFR 405 through 471 could potentially be a CIU. For example, a few industries who fall in the CIU group perform things like metal finishing, electroplating, or pharmaceutical production. But there are also many other types of production that would place an industry into the categorical group. So the next criteria would be an industry who discharges 25,000 gallons or more of processed wastewater each day. Next, another criteria is any industry whose processed wastewater makes up 5% or more of the NPDES permitted flow or organic capacity. So for example, if Long Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant only was able to treat about 100 milligrams per liter of TSS per day, then any industry whose wastewater had a TSS concentration of 5 milligrams per liter or higher could potentially be required to have a discharge permit. And lastly, if the POTW suspects that a user has a reasonable potential for negatively affecting the POTW's treatment process, then Two Rivers Utilities may decide to permit that user. If an industry does not necessarily meet the minimum criteria for a typical SIU, Two Rivers Utilities may still decide to sample and monitor the user and possibly issue them a general user permit, or also known as a local industrial user permit. So that's all I have. I'll give it back to you, Mike.
All right. Well, thank you, Chris, for that introduction information before we get on. We actually have a little spinner wheel here. We're going to select our first winner of a gift basket from Two Rivers Utilities. But unfortunately, since I don't know exactly who's on the call, we're going to leave everybody that was invited to this application in the drawing. So we're going to go ahead and spin and see who's our first winner of the prize. So here we go. Click, 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 click. Landing on, congrats, Emily Melton. I'm not sure if she's actually on this call or not, but we will get her a Two Rivers Utilities little gift prize. So congrats, Emily. And next, we will have Cody. We'll go back to the presentation and have Cody start his stuff. So go ahead, Cody.
All right, thanks, Mike. So now, we have a little bit of background on the pretreatment program and why we're here and what we do. We can talk a little bit about the permit application itself and how to best prepare in order to complete it. The following items will be very helpful for filling out the application. One which is the guidance document for the application that was provided by Two Rivers Utilities. Next, the previous permit application, monitoring data from designated sampling locations, which should be a 12-month average for each parameter. More data may be necessary for a representative concentration. And this data should have been provided to you by pretreatment staff already, but let us know if you do need any more info. Slug and spill control plan for your facility if that is required. The SDS for all chemicals on site and being discharged. All plant, process, and treatment diagrams and schematics. A correct classification of a categorical industrial user is a federal requirement for both the industry and the POTW. And knowledge of your wastewater equipment, including the make, model, and unit, et cetera, for all treatment and monitoring units. Now we're going to show the actual permit application, and I'll briefly go through it and point out some sections that may need a little bit of extra attention. So all of you are submitting a renewal application because your permits are expiring in December, but Two Rivers Utilities also sends these out to new or existing industrial users in order to determine if they do require a discharge permit. So,
sorry about that. Go back to the application.
mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties here. Right. I think you guys are able to see the,
That flashing.
no,
Stop flashing.
no.
There.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, I think we're good. So go ahead, Cody, start with that.
Okay. So as you can see up top, first thing, do not leave anything blank. If the question or section does not apply, please enter NA for that part. And do not use entries such as same as previous or unchanged, etc., unless that is approved by Two Rivers Utilities. And also, please be as detailed as possible while completing each section of the application. It takes more time and effort when we have to reach out and get more information after the initial submission. The application must be signed by an authorized representative, and a person must either fit the definition or be designated to sign and submit such reports to Two Rivers Utilities. And your signature certifies you under penalty of law that this document and all attachments were prepared under your direction or supervision. All right, so for Section A, here you'll list all the general information. Please put the legal name of your company here. And typically, this is what it says on your W-9 tax statement. Questions 3 and 4 have to do with the primary and secondary authorized representatives that will be representing and signing reports. Question 5, please put your on-site contact for when sampling or inspections are needed. And then next, you'll describe the type of process that is performed at the site. Also, please include the 6 or NAICS codes, which may help determine your categorical status. That is asked later on in the application. And last, list any changes since the company was established. So moving on to Section B. Here, please provide a production flow diagram, which is required. A great resource for this section would be the Permit Application Guidance document, which provides additional examples of acceptable schematics. Next, you're also required to provide a plant site layout. This should basically be a bird's eye view, which shows the general location of the tanks, production areas, restrooms, offices, and so on. The last diagram asked for is the wastewater treatment system. Please be as detailed as possible here because that's very important during our inspections and reviews. Section C asks for the days and hours of operation. In the last table in Section C, please provide general work activities for each shift. For instance, in this example, the facility performs knitting, sewing, and dyeing Monday through Friday on shifts 1 through 3, but only performs hand packing, shipping, and administration responsibilities on first shift, Monday through Friday. In Section D, list of products made and the raw materials used. Two Rivers Utilities understands that some of this information may be confidential and proprietary, and so under 40 CFR 403.13, the user can request that this information be kept confidential. However, this request for confidentiality must be made at the time that the application is submitted. Question 4 asks if the process discharge is in batches or continuous. And if batches, it's like the given average amount per day, week, or month. Next, list the hours and days of operation and discharge, and also if there is any seasonal variation in the production process. In Section E, the first section here is for the incoming water supply, whether it's from the city or an outside source. If your facility is using city water, please list the account numbers. And the table below is for water usage in the facility. In this example, processed water from dyeing contributes to the majority of the water usage, while domestic, HVAC, and washdown make up the rest of the facility's water usage. List whether the water usage is estimated or has a flow measuring device. And please be sure to put NA for all processes that do not use water. The next table on the following page is pretty similar to the last one, but this one asks for users to list how the wastewater is handled in volume. For example, the majority of wastewater at this facility travels through pipe 001 and then on to POTW, while other sources are evaporated. And last on section E, specify any request for a new daily or monthly flow limit. If a new limit is requested, please provide an explanation for the increase or decrease. All right, section F. Section F has been a place of common error that we have seen, and most likely was not filled in correctly on previous applications. So here you're required to fill in 2 X's for each row. The first X indicates whether the chemical is present or absent at the facility, and the second X is whether the chemical is present or absent in the wastewater discharge. So sometimes the chemical may be present at the user's facility and used in the process, but absent in the discharge to the POTW or vice versa. A majority of the chemicals listed are organic chemicals, and if you're not a categorical user, typically your wastewater was not sampled for these chemicals. So if you do not have results for a particular chemical and it doesn't show in your FDS listing, then putting an X as absent at both the facility and the discharge is acceptable. The last column of this table requires the users to list the average concentration of that chemical. So please use the historical data for the averages that were submitted to you by our pretreatment staff. And again, this is typically a 12-month average, but in some cases, a larger period might be necessary to get a more representative result. And so these results may be used to review the need for future permit limits. Continuing with section F, you must submit any additional sample results that were not previously submitted to Two Rivers Utilities. List boilers, cooling towers, and any tanks at your facility. Also list other waste that were disposed of by another method, and whether or not you are a hazardous waste generator. In section G, you'll put down all of your treatment units, and if you have any, and chemicals that are used. Please make sure you put pH control or solid separation here if you do have it. Next, if you have an effluent meter for your wastewater flow, please put that specific meter here. And list your calibration methods and any outside companies that do the calibration on that meter. Next is section H, where you must list your categorical status. This does not necessarily mean you'll be regulated as a categorical industrial user, but that you do have a process that has a federal categorical status that is assigned to it. Otherwise, check in this area below if you are not and do not have any of these processes. If you have a categorical process, please list it here and any other information that you know about. If you have questions, just contact us, and your coordinator will help you out with that. Then on to question 3, please, if you have any waste streams that are not part of your process but still flow through the monitoring location. Examples: restrooms and cooling towers. In section I, the slug and spill prevention plan, please list that information here. This might be a focus during our inspections this year, so this could also be a good time to update that plan. And the next pages ask a lot of questions, so please fill it out to the best of your knowledge, and be sure to put an X for each question. In section J, so the last section asks for other permits. as you can see listed here, stormwater, air, anything of that nature. So if you have any specific questions, reach out to your coordinator for this. And that pretty much is the entire application, which sounds pretty easy, right? So this workshop is an attempt to reduce the amount of corrections that you would be asked to make if it were not completed correctly. So hopefully that can help out a little there. And on the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the common errors that you need to avoid. So as we mentioned earlier, do not leave any sections blank. All sections require some type of entry. So again, put NA if you need to. And many times we see section E and F incomplete. So be sure that the information provided is correct and complete. And as discussed earlier, section F, be sure to include 2 X's for each row. And also, please make sure that the application is legible. We don't all have perfect handwriting, so we prefer that the application is filled out electronically, but if not, at least use a pen if you do write it out. And last, ensure that all the pretreatment units at your facility are listed in section G. Put all information for these and list any chemicals that are used.
All right, well, thanks, Cody, for your part. That was the meat of the workshop. So I know there was a lot of information on these applications. Many of you guys have filled it out several times before. You'll probably notice that we're a little bit more wanting to get it right on the application, because we had several of them. We had to go back on previous ones and just wasn't enough information. So appreciate your efforts to provide us all information you have. Just recently, with the water and sewer rates were approved for the fiscal year of 2021, and many of you probably already know, but there was a 5% increase in your usage rate. So if you didn't know that, yeah, you can look for it now. I think a lot of you got letters explaining that information. Fortunately, this didn't affect the permitting fees or any of our sampling and surcharge fees, so they're going to remain the same as they have been. The fees are broken down into 2 categories: one for SIU, which typically requires a little bit more review, requirements of the state, and the other was general user permits, which is less review and requirements. For new permits only, initial issuance fee of $1,000 would be collected. But fortunately for most of you guys, that's already been collected. So you'll typically only get an annual maintenance fee at the beginning of the year, January, February. And it's for SIUs, it's $250, and local permits, $100 for, this covers just a small portion of our administrative charges and stuff. So there's also, to mention, a reopening fee of $500. So if we need to amend your app permit based on either a user request or incorrect information provided on the application itself, and that's why this is important, to make sure you have good stuff on the application, to the best of your knowledge. Permits, they can be issued for a period not exceeding 5 years, and depending on the situation. Many of our permits are issued for less than 5 years. And the majority of you in this workshop are because your discharge permits that you have are expiring December 31st, 2020. So it is a requirement to provide us a permit application 188 days prior to expiration, which in this case is July 3rd, 2020. So July 3rd, we need permits to us. We would really appreciate if they were all complete to your best ability before you gave them to us. We don't have to go through and have you guys work on more information. So, but with that said, contact your coordinator if you have any questions about it. Put a reminder in your calendar a week before the deadline to complete the application, or reach out to one of us for help, because we may not be too forgiving if you don't communicate anything before the deadline. And we can be very helpful in making sure the application is complete. So please reach out. The state of North Carolina also has speaking of, extra training opportunities, they have certifications. A lot of it's done online, the trainings and stuff. So they offer biological as well as physical chemical operators certifications, which actually can provide a lot of great knowledge for the wastewater field. This is kind of side topic. Also, North Carolina has an organization called the North Carolina Pretreatment Consortium. They do certifications as well, and they discuss issues and upcoming regulations. And the organization is primarily made of, state regulators, but many of the many vendors, consultants, and industrial users. Sorry about that. We're in your growth. Our members as well of the organization. So they have an industry day that's very informative to everybody in the pretreatment field. And once the dates are announced, we'll let you know kind of on that. Here's some of the references that we use today to give you. And then questions and answers. I can actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to unmute all. So if you do have a question now, you can speak up. If you want to type it, that's cool too. We can, see anybody's questions. But basically, if you have any general questions, you can, ask now. Or if you think that's something that's going to affect everybody, you can definitely ask now. If you have a specific question, like I said, contact the coordinator. We could actually set up a Zoom meeting individually, like I said, Cody did one already with an industry, and they were able to share a screen and kind of go through the application and just hit every section that they had questions about. So it was very helpful to see kind of and just literally complete it right there. So they're willing to be able to help you with that. So if you are technically savvy, that would definitely be a way to go. So I didn't see any questions, so I guess we'll, move on. Before we finish this, we have one more prize giveaway. So let's go back to our wheel. Sorry, Emily. You already won. So we'll redo this. All right, good luck, everybody. Click, 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 click. Wheel of Fortune was, or not Wheel of Fortune, is one of my favorites. So here we go. Congrats, Scott Curtis. So I don't know if you're on this workshop or not, but we'll get you a Two Rivers Utilities gift bag the next time we see you. Hopefully, which will be a scheduled site visit, not having to go there for a reason. So I will conclude our industrial user wastewater discharge permit renewal application workshop. That's a long one. But please reach out to us at any time to be able to get your application to us. And again, this workshop is recorded, so we'll make it available once we get everything set. So again, thank you for your time, and I'll just kind of.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good one.